my name is Jason and welcome to my channel Pips-N-Chits. Today I have a special solo playthrough for you, and it's one of my favorite games and a game that I probably don't get out to the table as much as I would like. It is a gateway game for all intents and purposes. It's easy to teach, it's relatively easy to learn, it's good for all ages, there's various expansions for it, it's relatively scalable as far as the difficulty level goes. But I was looking at a bunch of videos out there, and there are no videos that cover one of the latest expansions for the game, and that is the Tragic Events expansion that first came out in 2017. Now, in case you missed it on Kickstarter, the good news is I believe I just read recently that it will be available in retail. Now, what does the Tragic Events expansion do? Well, first, it adds 3 new roles to the game. That would be I'm going to have to read it here, the Fire Prevention Specialist, the Strategist, and the Suppression Specialist. It also kind of mitigates a thing a few people complained about in the original game, and that is hotspots. We're going to get completely rid of the hotspots, and we're going to introduce 2 new decks of cards. One deck is going to be the Fire deck, and after every turn, a player is going to draw a card and see if that advances the fire or accelerates the fire. It's a way of kind of ramping up the tension and the excitement of the game. And there's also now a unique event deck as well. So depending on which cards we draw, we are going to have to make some decisions. Now, these decisions might be beneficial to us in the short run or detrimental to us in the long run, or anything could happen. We might find some boons and there might be some banes. It really is a fun, unique element to the game. And there's quite a few cards. Believe it or not, I believe there's 42 cards in this deck, and each one of these is unique. And we're only going to be playing the beginner level today. You'll notice on the cards that you might see Veteran or Heroic. We're just going to skip over those, and I'll explain that more when we get down to the table. Okay, before we go ahead and start the game, I just want to show you a little bit of the setup here. As you can see, this is a 2-sided board, and right now we are playing on the easier side, if you will. There is another structure on the opposite side that's a little bit more complex. We already have our fire set out as suggested by the beginner manual. We also have 3 POIs, whether you call them points of interest or persons of interest. I've completely randomized these. I don't know which ones they are. And in the basic game, there are 10 victims and 5 blanks. So I don't know what these are, and I have those off to the top of the screen right here. You will notice that there are some special tokens here as well, and these may be mixed into the game. These come with the Tragic Events expansion, and there are special rules that if we do come across them, I'll go ahead and discuss it then. Here we have our 24 damage markers, that is for the structure. If at any time that we go through all 24 of those cubes, the house more or less collapses in on itself due to structural integrity issues, and we lose the game. We also lose the game if we lose more than half the victims, and in this game it is suggested that we save at least 7 people. So if more than half of them perish in the fire, and that would be 4 or more, we also lose the game. We're going to play, even though I said we're going to be playing the basic game, we are going to throw in a few advanced or intermediate rules. What you don't see here on the board yet, and I have them off to the side, is we are going to be playing with the fire engine and the ambulance. And they have to be on their designated spaces here. And the only way to save a victim, one of the rules is you have to bring a victim out to the ambulance. So that is going to kind of make things a little bit tougher for us today. Also, you can see here I've already predetermined. I started with the generals. That's the only one I picked. You just have to trust me that I did go ahead and shuffle the deck of cards up. And these 2, the driver operator and the imaging technician, came up by random. So one of the other rules is if at any time we want to switch characters, if these any of these three characters aren't working out for us, they can make it over to the fire engine, and for 2 action points at the beginning of their turn, we can swap a character out. And I have a deck of cards here that with the different roles in there, including the new roles. As you can see, the suppression specialist is one of them that comes with tragic events deck. We have the event deck right here, and we only draw these when we are told to, and that's going to be more or less dictated by our fire deck here. These are unique cards. If we were ever to get run out of them, we basically just take the discard pile and reshuffle it up and start a new event deck. Chances are, though, we are not going to run out of that. And finally, here in the tragic events is we have our fire deck. And I just want to show you that there are these cards called the Fire Rages. And I believe there are 12 of these. Maybe there's 10. Let me count. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Okay, 11 of those. We also have 2 cards. One called Respite, where nothing happens, and one Accelerate card in here, and we're going to go ahead and shuffle that up. Now, what happens when we draw the Accelerate card, that ramps up the game. That makes the game exponentially harder every time we draw that. Because what I have off camera here, or in the top, is we have 6 flare-up cards. Anytime we draw that Accelerate card, we are going to add one of these flare-ups. There's only 6 at this level. There are, I believe, 10 included in the Tragic Events expansion, but for the beginner level, we're going to only play with 6. You're going to take one of these cards and put them in your discard pile. And every time we redraw these cards, it makes the game that much harder. You're going to see that things are going to ramp up a little bit more. We're going to be drawing, we're going to, in some cases, advance the fire 2 times. We're going to draw the event deck, and we're going to shuffle our decks back up. But you start off with these 6, and they are off, not in the core deck, if you will, or our initial deck. But they will get added, and trust me, we really don't want those. Other than that, I think just up at the top of the board here, I'll let you know that we have our double-sided fire and smoke tokens up here. We have some hazmat tokens, we have some special treatment tokens here, and we have our saved action point pool tokens. I did take 3 of the hotspot markers here, and I will be going ahead and using those just to mark off during gameplay which of our firemen have already went to that turn. So let's get ready to start into round number 1. And before I do that, I'm just going to finish up setting up where I want my firemen to start and where I want the fire engine and the ambulance. So give me a second and we'll get right into turn number 1. Okay, this is the start of turn number 1, and as you can see, I went ahead and laid out my generalist down here at the south end of the board, and I think his strategy might be either to rescue this person here or possibly put out this fire. Here I went ahead and put the fire engine with the driver operator, and I think they are going to try to use the deck gun and see if we can put out any of this fire right in here. If you'll notice, this house is divided by these red dashed lines into 4 separate quadrants, and anytime that he fires the deck gun, he's going to go ahead and target the quadrant that the fire engine is in. If we ever roll the dice and it's outside that quadrant, we just simply flip the dice to its opposite side, and more times than not, 9 times out of 10, that targets that quadrant right there. Lastly, went ahead and put the imaging technician up here. I think we want to possibly discover who this person is, if that is indeed a person or possibly a blank, and maybe the imaging technician could come in and save that person right there. So without further ado, let's go ahead and start with the imaging technician. And for one action point, he has a maximum of 4 action points. He's going to use his identify power for 1. So he's going to spend 1 of his 4 to identify this. And we have our first victim. Now remember, we have to save I believe 7 victims to go ahead and win the game. So there is victim number 1. He's got 3 action points left, and I don't know why this door should be closed. So using his last 3 action points, he is going to go ahead and run in. He is a 1 and 2, and for 1 action point, he will go ahead and flip that door open. His turn is done. We are going to go ahead and mark him with our little token right here just to let us know that the imaging technician has used his turn. And now we're going to come to the fire deck. We are going to draw our very first card and see what happens. And unbelievable, out of all the cards, we are going to draw, the very first card we drew was Accelerate, which means we're going to advance the fire and then we are going to advance it again. That's not how we want to start this game out. So let's go ahead and roll the dice and advance the fire. It is 5 and 1, so we have at least smoke right here. This 8-sided dice corresponds to the columns, if you will, in the house. And the red 6-sided dice refers to the rows. So 5 and 1 is right here, and we have smoke in here. And anytime smoke touches fire, the smoke immediately turns into fire. Anytime fire hits fire, there's going to be like an explosion, and that's when we have to start worrying about the damage markers to the house. So that was advance the fire the first time. Now is our second advance fire. And it is 1 and 4. Okay, so things are looking not too good here up in this bathroom. There's something smoking in there. Next, we're going to take a flare-up card. We're following the instructions here. We place a flare-up card, our first one out of 6. We put that in our discard pile. Then we're going to go ahead and draw and resolve an event from the event deck. And it says, the current player chooses an unidentified POI marker on the board. Remove all smoke and fire markers adjacent to that POI. Well, there isn't any, so there's only 2 unidentified markers right here. There's no smoke or fire here, and there's no smoke here. There is a fire, but I don't really call this adjacent because we have a wall next to it. So we're not going to really do that. It says shuffle the chosen POI marker back into the supply. Replenish POIs at the end of the turn as normal. Well, we didn't do that, so that really doesn't apply. This is just going to go into our discard pile. And it says shuffle the fire deck and fire discard pile together. So that card that we just added, that flare up, and the accelerate card go back into this deck, and we reshuffle it. And now instead of the 1 accelerate, we now have an accelerate and a flare up. Not the best way to start this game. And with that completes the imaging technician's turn. Well, let's go ahead and move to our driver operator. He has 4 action points, and I think for 2 action points, he's going to go ahead and fire the deck gun and hopefully put something out in the quadrant up here. So go ahead and roll our dice. And that is 5 and 1. Well, that's outside of our quadrant, unfortunately. 5 is here, so we flip this dice over. And the opposite side of 5 is 2. So here's 2 and here's 1. Well, some good news though, is water comes into this area here and would target any smoke or fire adjacent to it. We just so happen to have 2 fire tokens right there that are now eliminated. And he's got 2 action points left. I'm debating, do we drive the car? Do we try to drive the fire engine maybe to the other side? Maybe we do that. So I think for 2 action points, his remaining 2, we go ahead and move this for the fire engine over here. That will be the end of the driver operator's turn. And next we draw a fire deck card. And the fire rages. So all we do is advance it 1 time. We just roll the dice, see what happens. And that is 6 and 2. So it's right where our fire, our imaging technician is. But the good news is it's just smoke. He's not going to be knocked out, but he is now standing in some smoke right there. And next we move on to the generalist. And the generalist has 5 action points. So let's see. He's going to run into the house. 1, 2, 3, 4. We'll go ahead and reveal this. Okay, it's our first blank. Now remember, there are 5 blanks in our supply right there. We found our very first one. That's too bad because that was more or less a waste of all that movement for him. Go ahead and move that off the board, and he's got 1 movement left. Might as well just go ahead and move him closer to the action. Now, at any time at the end of a player's turn, if there are less than 3 POIs, which currently now we only have 2, we're going to have to go ahead and roll and reseed the board with 1 from our supply. So I'm going to roll the dice. And that is 4 and 1. So it looks like we have another POI up here, which isn't too bad. We have the ambulance here. This guy might be able to rescue both of them. But we definitely want to get rid of that smoke, because if this turns into fire, we're going to lose those guys. So that is the end of the generalist's turn. And we are done officially with turn number 1. Okay, moving into turn number 2, we're going to go ahead and reset our tokens up here. And I think, let's see, who do we start with here? Maybe the generalist. Well, if we have the... You know what? Let's use the fire engine here. Let's start with our driver operator, and he's going to spend 2 points, and he's going to drive over to this section here. And I think his last 2 points, he will go ahead and try to target. If we're lucky, I don't know. It might not. It might not be beneficial, because we have a very limited chance of putting that fire out. So maybe we don't do that. Maybe I retcon that. I think I'm going to retcon that. And we're just going to go ahead, and he's going to use his 4 action points, and I think we'll go ahead also run into the house. So 1, 2, 3, and 4. And he'll try to work his way into here. So that would be the end of the driver operator's turn. We'll go ahead and mark him as complete, but now we have to go ahead and draw a card from the fire deck, and it is advance the fire. So we'll go ahead and roll the dice. And we have 6. This is column 6 here, and 4 right here. This is going to be smoke. Now, right now, even though this looks adjacent, it really isn't. In as far as how the fire advances, it's orthogonal, so either up and down or left or right. If fire ever gets to here or here, then this turns into fire. But in this instance, this is just smoke. Just kind of pretend the smoke is buried here in the corner of the kitchen here. So that will be the end of the driver operator. Let's go ahead and start with our generalist. This looks like this is starting to cook up a little bit, and maybe a little bit of danger. So let's have our generalist try to put out some fire. So we'll go 1, 2. We'll flip the door open for 3. He's got 2 action points left. He will spend 1 to turn that to smoke, and another, his last one, to get rid of the fire. So he was able to put out a fire right there. we'll go ahead and put a marker on the generalist and draw from our fire deck. Oh my gosh. Wow, this is coming up very early again. So we're going to advance the fire twice and then continue following the instructions on the card. This is not turning out good for us this early in the game. So 6 and 3. So it would be column 3 and number 6. Well, we have smoke down here in, I guess this is the living room / dining room. And we have to do it a second time. So let's go ahead and roll our dice. And we have 1 and 2, which is right here. So we're adding some more smoke right here in the living room, if you will. Unfortunately, we're going to place another flare-up card in our discard pile. So we are using our second one out of 6. We are going to draw an event card. And it says, force delay. Place this card face up in front of the current player. Well, our current player is the generalist. And what does it say here? While this card is in play, each player gets 2 fewer action points to use on their turn and receives 3 saved actions when their turn is complete. This card is discarded after the advanced fire phase at the end of the current player's next turn. So that is going to go up here. That's really going to slow us down, but the good news is the flip side of it is we're going to get some saved action points. And then finally, shuffle the fire deck and the fire deck discard pile back together. So we'll take all of our cards and shuffle this up. And place that to the side. And finally, we have our imaging technician. And remember, because of this card right here, until we get rid of it, he only has 2 action points instead of 4. So we open up the door. The door was already open. He's going to move in for 1. I think we really want to maybe put out the smoke here. I think we could maybe hold off on rescuing these guys. Let's go ahead and you spend that last one there and to get rid of that smoke. And that should be it for our imaging technician. And let's see, on their turn. And then they receive 3, I believe, because of this force delay. They receive 3 actions for, what they can use in the future. They can't use it on this turn right now. But he's going to draw a fire deck card. And the fire advances, so we're going to roll the dice once. And that is 1 and 4. Oh no, that's not good. That is not good at all. So this fire, or this smoke, turns into fire. And unfortunately, we lose this token right there. So let's see who this person, if it was a person or a blank. Oh my gosh, we lucked out. It was a blank. So no harm right there. But one last person we have to worry about trying to save, but we definitely have to protect him. That is going to be the end of our turn. Okay, we're going to go into turn number 3. Let's go ahead and reset our players over here, or our roles. And I think even though they went last time, they have these 3 saved action points. Technically, we're going to go ahead and start with the driver operator. I mean, a little wishy-washy on the rules right here in a solo game. I mean, if he went right now, then this person would never be penalized from this card, but I don't think that's really fair to do. So we'll go ahead and start with the driver operator this turn. He's only going to have 2 action points because of this card right here. So I think his first action point, all he can really do is open the door. Here, he really can't put out the fire because even if he extinguishes this to smoke, it's going to immediately turn right back into fire. So unfortunately, he's going to go ahead and bank one action point. He only used one out of his two legal ones, so he's banking one. And because of this card, he's also going to get three more. And that is going to go ahead and mark this player's turn. So now we have to go ahead and go to the fire deck. Oh, and before I do that, I just realized I should have done this last time. We have to reseed the next POI because this one was a blank. So we're down to 2 and we have to have 3. So 2 and 2. Well, it looks like we have another POI right here. So maybe the generalist's next course of action is to try to figure out that person right there. So continuing after we seeded that, we still have to draw for the fire deck, and we have the fire rages, so we need to go ahead and advance the fire again. And that is 5 and 3. Okay, we have our very first explosion. Because there's a fire already here, this would explode. So traveling up and down or north-south, we're going to add our very first damage marker to the wall right there. And then traveling south, we will put a fire right there. Now, because there's a fire touching smoke, this also gets turned into fire. Now, traveling, east-west, traveling this direction here, we have nothing, so that would turn into a fire, if you will. And now, however, when we get to this direction here, we run into the door. Well, the door automatically gets blown off its hinges. So we basically lose a door right there, and it's just going to stop. We don't really care that there's a fire here. It's not going to carry over. If this were to happen again, because there is no more door there, it would go ahead and carry over. But that door just gets blown off its hinges at this point. So... and this is considered 2 damage markers. It's not affected by these markers, but just to let you know that why the symbol is here, it goes against the integrity of the house, and now that door is always basically open because there is no door. Okay, so that was our turn for that player right there. Let's go ahead and continue on. Let's see. Maybe our imaging specialist, does he reveal this token possibly or this token? Let's see if this is a waste of time. But I really want to get him out of this area here. So I'll tell you what, I think actually our imaging specialist, he's going to spend, he's got a bunch of he's got extra action points. So let's go ahead and use some of these right now. So for 1 action point, he's going to try to tell the specialist if that's a valid person or not. So we'll spend 1 of our tokens right there to go ahead and flip this over. Okay, yes, we have a victim. Okay. So the generalist now has kind of a plan. I think next he uses 1 action point to get here. So that was 1 out of his 4. He's got 3 standard actions left. Let's go ahead and he's going to carry 2. He's going to use 2 action points to carry him over. He's got 1 valid action point left. Let's go ahead and try to put out this smoke for 1. And he still has these 2 saved over. I think we'll go ahead. We want to try to get out closer to this ambulance as possible. So he's going to use his 2 last ones right there. He has no more actions left. So he is completed, and we are try to get our first victim outside. So now we go to the fire deck and we draw a card, and we advance the fire. And that is 6 and 3. So here is column 6 and 3. Uh-oh, now we have another trouble. This is now going to explode. So using our north-south movements, we're going to add 2 cubes. So traveling north, we damage this wall right here, and then traveling south, we damage a wall. Now going our east-west coordinates, well, right here, we have a wall, so unfortunately we are going to add damage right to there. And now remember what I said a few minutes ago, this no longer exists, so that explosion is going to travel all the way out. We have a fire out here, and because this fire is touching smoke, this now turns into fire. So that's a rough turn right there. Our fire's spreading, and now I'm thinking, boy, maybe the fire driver operator goes back outside next turn and gets back on the truck and tries to put out some of this. This is starting to get a little bit out of control, so we might have to do that. So it's up to our generalist right now. So remember, this card is going to go away at the end of the turn. He would normally have 5 action points, but right now this card would only allow him to do 2 actions. So, oh, criminy. He's going to go and run in 1 and then go over here for 2. That's all he can do right now because it's kind of pointless to put out any of this to smoke because it'll turn back in the fire. This card gets removed, but he now adds 3 action points saved up. And we finally get rid of that card. And now we're going to go ahead and draw a card from the fire deck, marking that he is complete. So what are we have up? We have advanced the fire. Okay. And 3 and 3. Oh my gosh. Okay, so 3 and 3 is not good. We have another explosion. And boy, okay, so first, traveling north-south. We're going to put an explosion rate or a damage marker on this. This would turn into fire right here because it would be smoke and immediately turn to fire. He technically gets knocked out. We'll talk about that in a second, but for now, he doesn't die, but he basically gets knocked out. So we're going to go ahead and put that marker right there, and we'll talk about knocked out in a second. Now, traveling east-west. Unfortunately, going this direction, we're going to add yet another marker to the wall right there. And we are going to add, even though there's a door icon there, we're going to go ahead and put a damage marker on the wall right there. So that's not great. Okay, well, that's the end of the generalist's turn. He is going to, now that he's knocked out, so in the rules state that when you're knocked out, you go to wherever the ambulance space is closest as the crow flies. Well, we have a choice right here. He is 1, 2, 3. He is also 1, 2, 3 from this space. I think we're going to try to go here to this ambulance space. So when he wakes back up, he's going to still can try to run in and possibly get that person right there. So unfortunately, being knocked out, he gets sent outside, and we're going to go ahead and continue.